We're live, and I almost started us without sound again. But
We have done that before. Yes.
what episode of Xal'atath are we on today? Do you remember? Is it 6? I missed one
Good
week, and it
question.
all goes out of the window.
All out the window. I believe we're on 6. You know what I'm gonna do? Because this is just part and parcel. I've lost track of episodes before. We're gonna go over to YouTube. You guys can check out do just what I'm doing. We're gonna go over to Discordian Kitty's YouTube. There we go.
But I don't think I've uploaded the last episode on YouTube either. Oh my word.
You did? 2 weeks? Wait. 2 weeks ago we did 3 patch events, which was episode 5.
Yes. Okay. So this is episode 7 or 6.
Episode 7. Don't worry. If you're listening to this on YouTube, we figured it out by then.
It will be labeled correctly.
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right. I mean, I've lost track of it. How do you lose track? We haven't even lost the point where we can't count on our fingers. It's already there.
It's just that time of the year. The year goes January, February, March, and then towards the end it goes October, November, December.
I have to say that this October has been a really good October for Warcraft. I think we're almost out of that honeymoon phase with the expansion. Definitely, if you've been into Endgame, we're there. People, the shine has fallen off of Xal'atath's bargain / guile and stuff, and people are complaining in Mythic Plus for reasons other than what we were talking about pre-show. The raid is done. For Race to World first, we're still going to be looking to fill up that Hall of Fame, but I am not raiding Mythic this tier. So for me, it was AOTC, get achievements, and now, just when you thought like, okay, we're reaching that slump, that post-launch slump, they come out with 11.0.5. And last episode, you and I were on the PTR looking at some of the stuff that was going to be coming because we saw all that sort of stuff. And now the patch is live, but that stuff's still encrypted.
Yes, that quest line that's supposed to start. Last I checked, it hasn't started yet. It's still sitting there with a gray exclamation mark over her head.
At least she's called a Dalaran survivor now instead of unknown.
Unknown. That's true. Although I don't know her, so they do have the conversations, but basically not much information that we didn't already have from the PTR.
Yeah. And if you want to know all about those conversations and what we were thinking about that, go over to YouTube. I'm sure that by the time you've posted this, the other one will be posted, or if it's not already posted. But there's something else that I did not know about. Did you see near the I'm going to call them fairgrounds, but it's the anniversary celebration fair, right? There is an NPC that is casting a lightning spell off in Tanaris, and it's all like mysterious and again encrypted, so you don't know what the hell's going on.
I haven't seen this. No, should I go over there now and we can take a look?
We should, because I haven't been there myself. I was only told about this, and so I was like, I've got to ask Discordian Kitty. There's no way you wouldn't be interested in this.
Absolutely. Okay, let's head to Tanaris and take a look. So, have you done any of the anniversary stuff yet? While we're going there.
So, I haven't done anniversary stuff because we came into this patch and Shaman was a big unknown. There were a couple of things that were looking to be absolutely disgusting, and enhancement shaman's already doing good, so nobody needed this, and only the most degenerate people wanted this. um
Oh no.
Turns out that they did a couple of fixes, so it's not that bad. Enhancement is still eating good, and they now have another hero spec, which previously they were going totemic with enhancement. The other hero spec was just a no-go. You didn't do it. But it's good, it's viable, it's fun. So I spent a lot of time testing it out, making sure that it was okay. Turns out, on top of fixing some of the more degenerate things, they also slapped us with a -6 aura buff. I know this isn't lore, so I'll explain this for our audience. But auras are this general tuning knob, which just increases or decreases your damage, healing, and output by a certain percentage. And so a -6 aura is just a flat 6% nerf to all of enhancement.
Oh no.
It was needed. We're still on top of the meters.
I see.
I cannot complain about a warranted hit slap with the nerf stick. So yeah, that's what I was doing. I have done some of the the quests that you would normally do weekly, like the awakening the machine or those sort of quests, because those do offer you a little bit of bronze.
Yes.
So you should make sure that you are doing those.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yes.
I'm here in Tanaris. Where should I be going? Do you know?
Now I believe it's northeast of the fairgrounds, probably on the other side of the mountain. But we're going to just quickly go check. I was told this on Discord. I just want to check where this is. Otherwise, we're going to be searching for a bit.
No, those are just pirates. I do like... Ooh, what's that? No, more pirate stuff, I think.
Okay, it's actually southwest, near the Gaping Chasm. It's the northeast edge of the Gaping Chasm on the map. I don't have coordinates here.
That's fine. I'm at the Gaping Chasm.
Look near the mountain range, and there will be the character's literally called Unknown.
Really? Are they still unknown?
They're still unknown according to this screenshot. I found it. Oh, it's a satyr.
A satyr?
Satyr.
Aha, found. Yes, look at that. An unknown satyr. Oh, you can fight him.
You can fight him?
Yeah, he says, let me show you what happens to heroes if you fight him. My pet is dead.
I mean, Bane. Okay, he does drop out of the effect. Basically doing no damage there.
Yeah. And I looted 1 gold from him.
1 gold! Okay, he's not meant to be looted. You think he's connected to Doomwalker? Because Doomwalker's like right near there where he spawns, but... Spit this. I'm gonna put this guy in the dirt myself.
Can you see what he's casting? What spell he's casting to hold that portal open?
No, there was no cast bar. It's just an animation.
Just
Like
holding open a
an
portal.
over elaborate idle animation.
How strange.
I didn't even get a gold from it. I only got 87 silver. He said, I am slain when he's dead.
Yeah, he didn't say that. Did he tell you, let me show what happens to heroes?
Yes, that he did. Very
And what
odd.
happens is nothing.
What happens is he's severely undertuned if he was ever going to do that.
Now, I wonder, the fact that he's labeled unknown feels a bit like, there he is again, feels a bit like this is not a quest that they finished or they've forgotten about something here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unknown usually is the label for something encrypted, but they unencrypt it by the time it's live. So either they forgot to unencrypt his name, or they forgot that he was there when they went live. One of the two.
It's odd because it's a elemental spell effect.
Ooh. No, he's got a name here in the chat. It says Ilya Zedin.
Do we know of any character in lore by that name?
I'm looking it up now. I don't recognize it, but it's quite a complicated name.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, I don't see anything.
Did you do a WoW wiki or did you just do a
Google
flat out
search?
Google search?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Archivon is up. I found it very curious. That is for sure.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely a
What?
void aligned, like he seems to be doing something voidy here. Don't you agree? Or would you say?
Chaos has used green and purple. We're definitely
That's true.
past the point where we would ever use fell, even though satyrs have been like, you know, they're fell corrupted elves. Yeah, I would say it's more likely to be void, maybe near the end of the holiday event. This is what destroys the holiday event.
Maybe.
Like I think it's too close to the anniversary grounds for it to be unrelated. That's where I'm at right now.
Yes. You would think it would have a page on Wowhead as well if it's been there for long.
So shout out. Let me give a shout out to Ellie, aka Keyboard Turner, because they also posted this. Where my friend sent me this information. So yeah, it's weird that it has a name in chat. That's like a big thing. That you found that name in chat.
Yes.
Even though it's unknown there. That makes me feel more glitched than anything else.
I feel like it must be glitched because, well, as I said, that unknown, they don't name things that because they want you, because they're named unknown. They name it that because they don't want you. That's just what happens when they've encrypted something. But definitely the NPC is not showing up on Wowhead at all. So there's a certain amount of time gating with this event. The new quests that are opening up haven't, like if there's going to be a new quest opening up, it hasn't yet. And I don't know how many of those quests are going to be related to the anniversary event itself. I suspect the one with the NPC in Donegal hasn't got to do with the fact that everyone's celebrating the anniversary. That just seems to be more Alaria, Valera, Verisa story happening there. I don't know what
Sorry, go ahead.
when those quests are supposed to become available. I don't think anyone does at the moment. Melithian in chat suggests it could be part of the Secrets of Azeroth stuff.
That is a good guess. I would say that is probably the best stab at it that I've heard thus far. I feel that in terms of quests and things happening, I would like if the Secrets of Azeroth sort of fed into more questing. I can understand if it doesn't, because it's just one of those things that people can come across later. Have you known anybody who came back for for this expansion, for the War Within, and has even asked about the Secrets of Azeroth to go back and do it?
No, but I haven't spoken to a lot of people who've only joined now. I did really enjoy the Secrets of Azeroth event myself, and would love to see more of that. And there was certainly some story that they were driving towards with that event.
Yeah, very, very much so. It's just I haven't seen somebody go back to it, and so I wonder, especially since this is a limited time sort of thing for this anniversary, are people going to go back to do this? And if not, and if they realize they're not going to be able to do this, can this be that intrinsic to the story? Maybe they can hint at something, but it can't be here's a core event that we can't have people miss.
Maybe. I suppose all will be revealed when they make the decision about whether or not we're going to see. Although we have seen strange NPCs before that they ended up not doing anything with. Most recently in Pandaria Remix, what was those were they vendors or something that weren't selling anything?
Yeah,
the hooded figures. They never did anything with that. At the most, that is a very, very mild hint that something shady is happening.
And I have to say that I like it if they do bring them back and be oh, that's what these hooded figures were all along. They're maybe dissidents of the Infinite Dragonflight that don't like that they're now working with the Heroes of Azeroth or the Bronze Dragons. So we have they haven't completely given up on the Infinite Dragons being adversaries at some points. And so that this could be used as foreshadowing, even if it's something that got left on the cutting room floor. They leave it in for that reason.
Potentially. Generally speaking, whenever I don't know who someone is and what they're doing, I sort of file it away under whatever's going on with the ethereals. Because they're always popping up, reporting to someone. We still don't know who. I suspect not Xal'atath, but someone. And, several people could be working for them. It feels like the hooded figures could have been either ethereals in disguise or someone working for whoever that person is. Definitely. I think we'll see more on that soon as well. In fact, when I was looking into the crystal, one thing that I realized that, of course, I knew, but hadn't thought about it for a while, is that the ethereals were mining Oshugon on Draenor, back on Outland. They had some purpose for that crystal, and they were mining bits of that crystal for something. And then they stopped, I think, because they didn't want to upset the Naru. It was a political decision. But I just wonder, will we find... We have several hints that we're going to see ethereals in a raid, because there are these raid icons on Wowhead that have been in the data, I think, since... I think it's since this patch, actually. Since this patch was on the PTR. And most of the icons that are strange have ethereal raid or the words ethereal raid somewhere in them. Some of them are actually just from our current raid because it comes from the ethereal boss, but there's a whole bunch that aren't. And then there's one icon that says goblin raid. So there's a lot of talk about Undermine becoming an area at some point during the War Within, and I'm wondering if the ethereals are going to be involved at all with that as well. But I think if we are going to see an ethereal raid, I wonder if it's got anything to do with this crystal that we will be exploring fairly soon.
So there's a couple of things. There is the fact that when we go into like the next part, we're either going to be dealing with we are going to be dealing with the raid, whatever that might be, and in the 11.0 or 11.1.5 or the 11.1.7, we'll be dealing with a mega dungeon. Right? So people have already been saying oh, are we going to have the Undermine be part of a mega dungeon? Or, and some people are upset about that because they're like, no, I don't want the Undermine to just be a mega dungeon. I think it works. We've already seen Mechagon City, which was also underground, used as a mega dungeon. Tazavesh is a big city, and it was used as a mega dungeon. So I feel like these cities that then become mega dungeons are pretty good. I would just like for us to be able to visit it outside of the mega dungeon. But I also recall Siege of Orgrimmar, and that is, of course, the city being done as a raid. So the question I have for you and for our chat is, would you prefer to have Undermine or we'll call it a city, we'll call it the ethereal city? Which one would you prefer to have as the raid, and which one would you then have as the mega dungeon?
That is a tough one. I honestly think ethereal would be more fun to visit, just on the basis of I don't really know what to expect with them. All I can think of is some of those beautiful areas in Outland, those sort of botanist domes. Love those. And the dungeons in Outland can be quite gorgeous, the ones that are associated with the ethereals. So I think I'd love to see what an ethereal city would be like, and then have that be as a raid would be just gorgeous, because then you can explore it fully. But Undermine matters to me so much as a previously goblin main, as someone with such a close bond with the goblins. I've always wanted to see Undermine, and the thought of it being a dungeon just makes me so depressed. I mean, we've already visited, it's not really Undermine, but it's the island that Undermine is under. It's Kazan. We already visited that in a dungeon recently in, well, I say recently, but in Battle for Azeroth. The Mother Lode, that's Kazan.
Oh!
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
I did not remember that was in Kazan.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, the boss that we kill at the end of Undermine was, at the time, the leader of that faction of goblins that had control of Kazan. So we don't actually know who leads them now, because we killed the last boss. But I'm guessing that Gallywix might have shown up again and taken leadership, because I believe it's the Steamweedle cartel. I believe he's been involved with them before. There's obviously, it's unthinkable to see Undermine and not see Gallywix again. As far as I'm concerned.
I think it's a great time to bring Gallywix back, to see him have taken over, and then to use that to finally kind of give Gazlo his time to shine, to be like, hey, he defeats the old leader of the cartel, cements his leadership, also becomes a force for good in the goblins and is recognized by all the other cartels. That to me just seems like such a layup.
It would be incredibly satisfying because, I mean, Gallywix he's introduced in the game as a foil for the main goblin. You've always hated him. You know, you're not supposed to have ever been on his side as a goblin. And I've seen the concern that if we do kill Gallywix in a raid, it will be yet another horde leader becoming a raid boss. And I get that, and I think in any other circumstance I would agree, but I just cannot agree for Gallywix. I think calling Gallywix a horde leader is what's offensive, not turning him into a raid boss. He was always meant to be a boss. He honestly should have been a dungeon boss that we got rid of back in the day. The fact that he was our leader for so long is insane to me. Sorry, I'm very upset with him. I always have been.
I've never forgiven him. Go down. I would not have mind if he had gone down with Garrosh. So instead of Mechafuse, could have been Gallywix there.
Yeah, well, sure. I always felt he was more in Sylvanus's pockets. I thought it was weird that we never dealt with him against Sylvanus. Because I actually really quite liked his dynamic with Sylvanus. It was such an unusual pairing. And I liked that they ended up working together just because, needs must as villains. She saw a use for him and accepted it. And he found a way to make himself useful to her. I really like that dynamic. I honestly would have enjoyed exploring it a bit more. So I more see it as a missed opportunity that we didn't face him with her, but I guess it's not like he would have gone to the Shadowlands, other than the bit that he does, where we don't see him, we just know he's there.
I think if you like that dynamic, I think that it would be good for him not to come back until Sylvanus comes back, and even if he is ultimately going to be a raid boss, to have him sort of on the opposite end, where Sylvanus comes back and it's like, what are you doing, Sylvanus? You always knew that sacrifices had to be made for a profit or whatever, blah 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 blah. Why are you like this now? To show that she has changed, right? Might be a better use for him than to have him sort of dealt with now. I don't know. I think he can be used quite well, because yes, he was a foil for the player, but to have Gazlo step in and do that, since the player has sort of moved on from that, and not all players are goblin players, to have him used as a foil for Gazlo would be a really good use for him. But to also have him used as a foil for Sylvanus would be great as well. Depends on which way they go. And I just don't want him to be a boss for the sake of being a boss. Like you already said, like we've already had too many Horde go bad guys that we've had to kill. So like you got to use it intelligently if you're gonna go back there.
Sure. I think if he does end up being a boss, I do think he's a better foil for Xal'atath than for Sylvanas, purely because I just can't see him being much of a threat to Sylvanas. He was useful to her. That doesn't mean she couldn't wipe the floors with him if she was so inclined. Whereas for Xal'atath, he is the most successful goblin leader who has had a completely different attitude to Xal'atath. Xal'atath's leadership style is the polar opposite of Gallywix's. So for Xal'atath to defeat Gallywix would be symbolic of the new leadership, the new approach, the new Green Deal taking root with the goblins. And I think that would be more satisfying story narratively. I do get what you're saying here about having him be a boss, but I do also think that's another reason I can't see the goblin. If Gallywix is a boss in the goblin Undermine, then I can't see Undermine being a dungeon, because that would just put Gallywix alongside the previous goblin boss that we had in Motherlode. You know, it would make Undermine basically Motherlode 2.0. It's a combination of a combination of Motherlode and Megatron. Megatron? Mechagon. Not Transformers. I feel that would just be too samey and boring. And I don't particularly enjoy either of those. I don't particularly enjoy running either of those dungeons, especially Motherlode. I can't stand that dungeon.
What?
Can't handle it. Hate it. I ran that dungeon so many times trying to get the engineering pattern, which I never did get. Still don't have that mount. And it's so long and boring. I just don't enjoy it. Mechagon is a different story. I do find Mechagon quite boring to run through if you're like farming something, but I always appreciate those mega dungeons. They're always done well. I can't complain about how interesting the design is of Mechagon. But I wouldn't want to see that for Undermine. I want more from Undermine. In fact, I don't want it to be a raid, or if it is a raid, I only want it to be a small part of raid, but what I really want is a new city for the goblins. I want it to become... I mean, hell, if I could believe that we'd get a whole zone that would be pure Undermine, that's what I would want. Unfortunately, I don't think that's what's happening.
I constantly lament that Mechagon is so closed off that you like. I love that you can go to Tazavesh and you can go around that city in a non-instance thing.
Yes, I do love that. I agree with that.
Mechagon doesn't have that. I would love, like, I wouldn't be doing it, but I know that some people who like love RP and stuff would be running around there and having a blast. I like that space. Those spaces do exist, if for no other reason that they want to like have a story that happens in there. I don't understand anybody on the Warcraft narrative team, right? You want a living world? Not everything needs to happen exactly where everybody is. Like, we do not need the Navy to come in carrying all the characters that you want to be involved in the story, because the story can only take place here. You can have a envoy who comes in and says, "Oh, let me tell you what was discussed," and then we go, and then we have a cinematic that takes place in Silvermoon or in Casmodan or in well, not Dalaran anymore. In like back, like, you don't need, let's say for some reason the dragons get involved. We don't need the dragons to fly out and be like, "Oh, what's going on over here? We sense Titan stuff." You could have just anybody come and say like, "Oh, the dragons were discussing," and then you do the cinematic right? In Valdrakken, and it's like, oh, they were talking this, and it's like, go tell the heroes that they need to know about this, and then we can go and deal with like whatever's going on, because like, you know, later on when the last Titan happens, there's going to obviously be involvement from the returned Watcher Tyr, who just came back from the dead. I think he's going to be instrumental. We're going to be dealing with stuff in Ulduar, and I know we'll go to Ulduar. But like, we've also got Odin and all the stuff that he's got, because he like literally ripped out a part of Ulduar and set up shop in the Broken Isles. So like, we can go to all those places, but they can also just have some cinematics in those places. That's like, oh, Odin was saying this, and then he fell into the sleep, because like, why not? They could do some sort of Odin sleep to show like, oh, something's going on with the Watchers, and then if we find out that all of the Watchers are starting to fall into sleep, and then like, I don't know, I'm just spitballing here. I've gone off on a random tangent because I love these tangents, but what I've tried to say is that you can have these spaces that are used for cinematic stuff, instant stuff that brings us back there, so we could go back into Mechanome or whatever. But I love exploring these spaces, even if it is a mega dungeon or a raid. We saw with not Emir Drasil, what was the Aberrus? We saw with Aberrus that they can use these spaces for single player narrative content, and I really want them to triple, quadruple, quintuple down on doing this now, right? The raid story mode is nice, I think, just so that people could see the fight, but they didn't have the narrative in there, and I want them to really start pushing narrative again in these different spaces.
I absolutely agree. And I also particularly enjoy this direction that they've taken. And we've discussed this before, where an area that's a dungeon or a raid is accessible in the open world as well. A great example is the Rookery, the way that you can go fly there and look at it. I just love it. And again, Tazavesh, as you said, this should be the norm. This is how it should be. It certainly makes the places feel more alive when you go into them and you realize, wait, this is the place I've already been. I know this area. It just feels so much part of the real world. Whereas before, dungeons and raids always felt so segmented off, like a separate part of the game. So I'd love to see either way, ethereal or goblin, whatever they create, I'd love it to be more than just whatever it is. I'd love it to have world quests in there and story and a way to explore.
Yeah. A real sad thing that is kind of counter to this point is our latest raid. Well, sorry. We got a new BRD version. But Nubarar Palace. If you go to the raid, you can actually fly over that wall, but if you fly over that wall, you get knockout screened back to the raid entrance. Blizzard, just remove that wall.
Just let us go look.
In the next... Yeah. They can do that in the next patch when it's like canonically, hey, she's been defeated.
Yes. So now it's okay. You can go look around. It's fine. And they could even add a little bit of like flavor. Have characters move in there, and that's where you can go find them hanging out.
Yeah, like they're no longer on the outside because they've disposed of the queen, and they're taking their place among the people, so they're actually within the palace itself. The general, the weaver, the vizier, especially the vizier, he's out in the open.
The problem is, now you're making me hope that that's why they have put that wall there, because this is the plan.
Maybe. We can hope. Crossing my fingers on this one.
It would be great. So, we were supposed to talk about side quests this episode, but I don't know if we're going to get there because I still want to ask you what your thoughts. We've already speculated about it a bit, but what are your thoughts now about Beladar and the crystal that we might be visiting soon, and just generally all this crystal stuff?
So, we were off last week, and just last week we got a new 100 disc quest that revealed that Beladar is concentrated essence of Azeroth that the Titans discovered as they were building the Coreway in order to get down to observe the World Soul, and indeed confirm that Azeroth is the prime World Soul. Now, we know the relationship of Beladar to Azeroth. Beladar shifts between light and shadow. And based on, like we were talking about at the top of the episode, we know that there are other crystals around. And we know of one in particular that we're most likely going to be seeing in the next patch. I am so curious to see if that crystal is also light and shadow, because that will lean heavily towards Azeroth being distinctly light shadow, or if that crystal is perhaps another version where it is life and death or order and chaos. I would like to see a life death one going, because like we talked about, I think 2 episodes back, that would be a very cool thing to see it have that kind of effect like Beladar does on its wildlife and its terrain, to see these things shift from living to undead, or from like growth to rot. But also because it would mean something specific for the World Soul itself, having alignments that aren't order. Like I would say that the order chaos wouldn't be this positive, but a life death is like, well, just thematically refreshing, because we haven't seen many things with life in it, but also just like it would point so heavily to that theory that we've been cooking up here, which is that Azeroth has all the powers. I have to ask you, okay? Have you seen this video that's been going around online that maybe Azeroth is the first one?
Yes, that was... I may have seen it. Certainly heard the theory.
For those of us who haven't, just give us a little lowdown on it.
So the idea is that from the beginning, the Titans have always told us that Azeroth was a nascent Titan world soul. Like all world souls, all world souls are nascent Titans. But there have been some questions about what the Titans are saying, because it's always important to remember that because all our information comes from inside the universe, it is all considered at least potentially an unreliable narrator. In fact, even this Beladar thing, it's not really revealed so much as the Titans claim that the world has these chunks of world soul in it, and then Dagran assumes that this includes Beladar. And it's a good assumption because the image is exactly Beladar. I mean, it's, he's making a educated guess there. But it is worth remembering that it's not necessarily for sure. It could just be another lie. It could be a misunderstanding. It could be a misinterpretation. But generally speaking, the idea that Azeroth is definitely, absolutely 100% a Titan is very questionable. Not least because if she's a Titan, why do they have to do so much preparation to make sure she gets born a Titan? Instead, we do know that Xal'atath is this incredibly powerful world soul. They keep calling her the Prime World Soul. And Prime and First One are words that have been linked for obvious reasons before. Generally speaking, we don't know what's happened to the first ones, where they are, but is it possible that maybe they have disappeared, but they came from world souls like Xal'atath, and maybe that is what makes her so special, and that's why the Titans want her so much, because they want to claim this power for themselves. It's possible. But these light-infused world soul crystals it's really confusing at first, because Beladar does seem to be one of these crystals, without a doubt. And yet Beladar is light infused. And there's so much information that shows Beladar did come from the sky. Like, maybe it didn't. But the vision of Beladar was of a falling star. Inside the old, the original artwork for the area, Beladar is labeled a Naru crystal. And in Season of Discovery, a shard of pure light was discovered as well. In fact, I went and made myself a little undead, level 1 undead in Season of Discovery, and corpse ran the whole way to the middle of Hillsbrad's foothills to go look at it myself. By the time I got there, I was level 2. And there it is, okay. A shard of pure light. A Tauran nearby tells you that this is Anshi's tear. So a tear that came from the sun. Again, these crystals coming from the sky. They don't seem to be coming from the earth. They're coming from the sky and going down, because that shard isn't there anymore. Where'd it go? The only way it could have gone is down. So I do wonder what this next crystal is going to turn out to be, because I feel like maybe the reason why they world soul crystals is because the light takes from the world soul to create these crystals, almost like a chrysalis. I relate it to the old gods and how they clearly connect to the blood of Xal'atath, because if we pull them out of Xal'atath, there's big wounds in Xal'atath. They're clearly drinking the blood or have connected to the blood. It's very parasitic. And old gods are obviously the opposite end of the spectrum, because they're void aligned, which is the opposite of light aligned. So I wonder how much the light behaves in a similar but different way. Anyway, I can go on forever on this tangent, so I will stop.
I like it. I had, like, when I had gone through it, just for anybody who for some reason isn't in on the joke, this is obviously one of your videos, which is why you're aware of it. But I had thought, perhaps, what if the vision wasn't of Beladar falling into the position it is now, but rather the vision is of Beladar crashing down from where it is currently.
Oh man. Like falling into...
Yes,
oh, wow.
Falling from the ceiling that it's in and crashing down. And so they are there for the fall of Beladar.
That would be great. That's brilliant. I love that.
I thought it would be like very cool, but I also felt it would be impossible unless they were willing to phase the entirety of that zone. And it would be such a monumental thing that would be akin to the Valley of Eternal Blossoms getting Shaw corrupted, and the player base hated that they couldn't go back.
Yeah, I still hate that.
This would be worse. Everybody loves Hollowfall. Just imagine them ruining Hollowfall. So I've abandoned that idea. But like in a movie, in a fully cinematic sequence, my goodness, what a pop. What a huge stake raiser. What an amazing thing. Just put in a bronze dragon so people can go back. But wow.
You know, it's funny because there is also some early hints that there is another hidden zone that will be revealed later called, I think, the Lifelines. And it's like adjacent to Halafor, I believe. So imagine the crystal falls down, tears a hole through Halafor, and hey, look beneath it.
I mean, when you say the Lifelands, that really makes me think of the Heronair and that
Yes,
that green wall that we explored in I think episode 1, might have been episode 0.
No, I think it was episode 1. And absolutely, when I saw that, I was remembering that same conversation that you were theorizing that we're going to go there, and you showed me the wall that will take us there, and I absolutely 100% think that's happening. But obviously not yet, because first we've got this crystal to go deal with. Yeah. Because that is the other thing. Are the crystals all light aligned, as you asked? Or are they, with the first one thing, are they aligned with other, like, are the crystals all aligned with different forces? Because Azeroth is aligned with different forces. Is that possible? It will be very... And the more I think about it, the more it makes sense that this other crystal wouldn't be light aligned. Because the two crystals that we know of that absolutely were light aligned called to people. They, Beladar and the Shard of Pure Light, they've got people who come see it because they were called to. Whereas the people that this crystal called to were the goblins. No light worshipping or light aligned people got the vision to come look at this new crystal. The Arathi are only going as far as we know because they heard about it from the goblins. Which makes me wonder, like, there's definitely a difference there. And also, if the world soul was filled with light-aligned crystals, why would there only be 3 crystals that have called to people in total? Like, I don't see how they can all be aligned with one particular force, or even all aligned with all the forces.
This is not a actual answer. This is just me being cheeky. But this is how we get Goblin Paladins.
Well, we got Goblin Priests. Why can't we get Goblin Paladins?
Because they weren't called to the crystal yet. I think that would be great. That to me would kind of, again, all of these conversations, folks, you got to go back to previous episodes because this all kind of starts tying into each other. Because I'm going to go back to, again, another previous conversation where we're talking about Khajiit and how that affected the goblins. And what's the alignment of Khajiit?
Yes.
Right? And so are we looking now?
We still don't know what the alignment would be, but I am beginning to think there's more and more evidence that it's aligned with something.
Yeah. Right? And then that would fall in line there. In my head, I can't think of a better way of doing a fell good or fell neutral aligned faction than to shift the goblins in their new sustainable ways, and then have the opposite of them be the gnomes as the order faction, and then have this crystal be chaos / order flipping, and then have, but like, do you put the gnomes and the goblins on that dichotomy? Because that feels a little retreading the same path.
It feels a little unfair to the gnomes. If they have to be order.
I mean, like they're like you mecha gnomes then? Because they're looking to regain their mechanization / their re-origination. So the mecha gnomes could fit into that.
That's true. It also feels a bit like too many races are aligned with order now because of, well, I suppose the dragonflies aren't necessarily full order anymore, but there's so many people who are Titan forged, Titan, Titan created, Titan worshipping, that I actually do want to start seeing more of the other cosmological powers get a foothold, as it were. I'd like to see a bit more life in particular.
Yeah. I think when you look at how Draenor was so filled with spirit, right? And that the orcs were like so akin to the elements, I think that the orcs should maybe find a heritage that is aligned with life. Like, it almost feels by default that the trolls should be, because they have the Loa that's so core to all of the trolls. They have so much that's there. You could have the Zandalari with their new connection with Wansamdi, right? The other trolls that have been with Hakir, with I'm forgetting Wansamdi's former boss that he's now usurped.
I want to say Mazala, but that's not right. Begins with an M, doesn't it?
I think Mazala might be right. I'm sure Chad will correct us. But again, those are two death-aligned Loa that are also there with the trolls. So the trolls are great for a life-death sort of tangent and where they go. Maybe that when they look more into the voodoo that they've been staying away, they can explore that a bit more and show how that fits in with this. And that would be great, in my opinion. And that's something that can be easily fit in when we are doing things in Midnight, because Midnight is going back to the Sunwell, and right near the Sunwell is a major troll cultural place with
Zulaman. Isn't it Zulaman?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Because Zul'Gurub is in South Shore.
Yes, and the trolls, they're not wrong in that conflict. They're vicious and they do commit terrible atrocities, but they have more than enough reason to have a problem with the Blood Elves. When they say the Blood Elves stole their land, they're not lying. So it would be nice to see some sort of resolution there. And I think, so it's very clear that we're not going to be dealing with the Lifelands and the Harrenir yet, but maybe that's great. Maybe that will tie in nicely with Midnight, because it will be towards the end of this expansion. And then because the Harrenir are obviously a troll-like species as well. It would be lovely to see the troll side of things explored in the future expansion alongside the elves, because they're the same. It's not the same species, but they're the same origins. They're related.
They are related. They're like so closely related that I would put it along the same lines of like Eridar to Draenei, where they were splintered off from each other, and like maybe I would say a bit further than that, but like I didn't want to call them like mechanomes to gnomes, because that's a very artificial separation that's occurred.
Or maybe like the Broken to the Eridar. Because they're same origins, but have gone in very, very different ways, and have been affected by cosmological forces, in fact, has changed them, so they've got different cultures, different histories now, but they still do have this sort of common ground that could certainly be explored.
Yes, yeah. And so, like, there's a lot there. This is all in my head because I recently posted on Blue Sky, and I was saying like how much I love that they put in these new races, and the earthen like Love the Earthen. They did such an amazing job with the Earthen. I think the Earthen are one of the best introduced races in Warcraft, bar none. Like,
Really?
I like having played through uh just getting back the Storm Riders, having played through the side quests in order to understand the Oathsworn versus those who broke their oath,
The
having
Unbound.
done the side quest where it is literally the warden who has donned two faces in order to bend or like somehow make his people survive while not fully breaking the oaths. Like, there's such a great culture there. I could live in in, in Dornogal. It is so good. Just the top area, like not even including the Arathi and the Nerubians. They've done such a great job of making just that one zone so full and so like a million stories that you could tell in there. Yeah, Earthen get my vote for best introduced race. Period.
Wow, that's very high praise. I must say, I agree about Donegal. I think it's incredibly wonderful that the Earthen get to have the main city of an entire expansion and the expansion they're introduced in be their city. And that actually would have been so great with some previous races. It makes me sad that we never saw that with, for example, goblins. But it's such a delightful way to honor them, and to have that. You always will have those memories. If you roll an Earthen in years to come, you will always remember that it was this particular expansion where you first created your Earthen, that everyone knew your city, your culture, your people.
I feel really bad because you know what? I haven't made an Earthen myself just because I've now got one of every single class, and that means I haven't actually done the Earthen starting experience.
Haven't you?
And I'm still saying they're the best race.
Wow. I am very surprised. It's definitely a starting experience worth doing, especially because you get this really cool transmog that you can use on dwarves and dark iron, I think. In fact, I'm still a little sad that I can't use the hunter transmog on my hunter because it's so beautiful. But yeah, it's some of the best transmog in game, and it's starting area gear. It's crazy.
I'll give it a shot for sure. I'm reaching a point now because my raid team is basically clearing through all but the last boss on heroic.
Beware.
In the first night alone. We're gonna do, of course, this new raid. So I do want to go into stuff, and at this point, most of my, if not all of my, renowns are in their 20s. Didn't get any additional story. No, all of them are 20 plus. And we didn't get any additional story. Come on, Fliz. I know people like rushed to get to like 19 to unlock whatever story in Dragonfight, but I loved that there was additional story when you got into those higher renowns, and I loved.
No. Oh, I disagree.
Oh, you disagree?
Oh, I could not disagree more.
I want more story. That's all I want.
I like the more story. I hated the fact that the story was locked behind renown. It caused so much trouble. You know how much of that story was missed by people because they didn't do it. And when they eventually did do it, they didn't really pay attention. People had no idea. There was like important Dragonflight story that people had no idea had happened. And we kept getting questions. What is this? When did this happen? What's going on? Why are we here? And we'd I'd reference story and people would go, what, when did that happen? And it was because of this renown thing. And I think there's a huge problem when the player base doesn't experience the story together. I think it causes big issues because it's a social game. So when story is experienced, people talk about that story and people tweet about it. And it's one thing already with the PTR and people trying to avoid spoilers. That's bad enough. But if you've got some people who are no-lifing it and they've managed to get to Renown 25 or whatever, and other people are really, really taking it slow, and it's sometimes over 8 weeks between two people experiencing the same story, I think it just doesn't work for an MMO. But that said, the only times that I thought it did work was when the story wasn't important to the plot, and it was, the best example I think is the Tuskar. With their story, it was about taming an Otusk. You go help this Tuskar who hasn't been heard from by your Ascara. So it's not even an Ascara Tuskar, it's like a different tribe. And you find out they've got a problem with their chieftain who's really depressed ever since his Otusk died. And you help him deal with that. You help him deal with the threats to the town. But then you help him go tame a new Otusk. And it's such a beautiful story. And you really get to feel a stronger connection to the Ascara as a result. It doesn't matter overall. Like if you don't do the story in Dragonflight, you're not going to miss the story of Dragonflight. You'll miss an experience, but it doesn't affect understanding the main story. And then Hunters, who did it, got to tame Otusks after that. And I thought that was this particularly special thing because then, again, you have this solid memory of how you learned how to approach an Otusk and choose one and tame and all that. It's just, that was fantastically done. So that's the exception where I think if you're going to have story, it has to be done pretty much exactly like that, where it's more of a local story than a main story. And it gives you something special, but it's not so important that you're going to feel incredibly left out if you have to do it 20 weeks after other people, or if you forget to do it or something like that.
Yeah, you know what? I'm good with that, especially since Dragonflight and The War Within have shown that the side stories can be incredibly meaningful, even if they're not like world-ending impactful. So if in Dragonflight they had done you reach Renown 19, and the Green Dragon story thing is like Maritha reminiscing about times with her mother and what it means for her to lead. That would have made the stuff that showed up in Mirdrasil have a bit more context for those who had looked for it, but not necessary critical information for those who had missed it.
Yes, exactly. So I do agree that they did kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater by completely getting rid of quests at higher renown, and I believe they did it for exactly all the reasons I listed. But yeah, I understand why they did it, and I think if it's going to be a choice between the two, I do think it's better to rather have story accessible to all people at the same time, even if that means time gating, which I know everyone hates, than some people can get story before others. I don't like that.
I genuinely think that you can do a mix of both. You can have it as like, hey, you need to be at least this level of renown, and like it doesn't unlock to this point. Why would I ask for a double gate? Oh my goodness, Manny, what the hell are you thinking? I think that like you need to put things into a certain spot so that when people hit like level 60 or level 80 2 months down the road, they're not immediately hit with all of these exclamation marks, right? It's a simple double lock of being like, hey, it's been this long since the expansion started and you didn't just hit 80, so we'll slow it down for you a bit. Um, and that means that the renown level you need to hit can be remarkably low, because the time gating will slow it down for anybody else, and the renown gate will slow it down for people who show up later.
Yeah, I think um, I I think that's definitely a good compromise. And I know what you mean. You sort of almost don't want to say it because it does sound like double time gating, and everyone hates gates, you know. But you can't have it all come out in one day. That is also a problem. Although I do find that the very much faster patch cadence also helps, because nobody's going too long without new content, and then it doesn't feel like time gating, even though essentially it is.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I know there's always going to be power players. There's always going to be players who are far more casual. It's very hard when you're in an MMO and everybody is sort of out there. There's never going to be a point where you, Discordian Kitty, who loves the lore, who plays through all of this stuff, is going to see at the same time as my mage friend, who weeks later will be like, "Oh, I didn't know that quest even existed." There's always going to be a kind of break there. There's always going to be the, "Hey, this just got unencrypted. We're going to talk about it," and the people who will see it on sites like Wowhead or through their favorite content creators, there are always going to be people who are going to like show up and be like, "Oh man, I want to know about this," and start looking at videos and maybe see something before they would otherwise see it, or before it's even possible for them to see it. So I feel like it's very hard to ask for the ideal. For me, it's about trying to get it as close to engaging and accessible, I think, are the two things that you need to hit. Because I don't want to throw story at somebody who isn't engaged, because then they'll find it a nuisance. And I don't want to throw story at somebody who is already overwhelmed with a bunch of things, because then they won't be able to absorb it. And I think that's the things that you have to focus on when you're saying like, "Hey, when do we give this story to people?"
Sure, but
like, will they care, and do they want it?
I think when it comes to the main story, MMOs in general already, and World of Warcraft in fact in particular, already have quite a lot of trouble getting everyone on the same page. It's so easy to get lost in the story if you're not paying 100% attention. And I think anything that makes that worse needs to be avoided, which is, I do think, locking main important changes the narrative beats, like tells you where we're going next, behind renown was a mistake. Whereas the side stories that add the flavor, give you extra context, give you some local feelings, that's mostly for the people who love the lore, those for sure definitely can be locked behind renown. That said, I'm really glad that these discs stories, for example, have been something that we're all getting at the same time, because imagine trying to keep up with that if someone is already 5 quests deep, because they have the time to spend every day opening. I mean, in Dragonflight, it was people flying around collecting, digging up dirt, that you could use that. Like, at no point should somebody feel compelled to do that because they don't want to be behind on the story. Sorry.
No, it's fine. I think we're both coughing a little bit. It's weird. It's like when a book gets released. There are people who have to go to work, and so they can't read the book on the first day. Guys, come on. I've got a day job. There are people who have the ability to sit down and just hammer through that book. Do we start releasing books one chapter at a time to avoid the community getting ahead of each other? I think there's always going to be that range, and how much of it is acceptable is different in an MMO because people are living in that same space. But like, I think at certain point it's relevant to the community that, like, if you're in if you're in a Discord with your friend, maybe you don't go yelling, "Oh my goodness, do you know what happened on the PTR?" We already have that um culture, the cultural norm in place. And I think at a certain point, Blizzard needs to stop babysitting the community, and the community needs to start enforcing its own set of rules.
Yeah, but I feel like, everyone plays the game for their own, everyone has their own reasons, their own things that they enjoy about the game. And in general, I am against anything that makes somebody who enjoys one aspect of the game feeling overly pressured to do too much of another thing. That doesn't mean I don't think there should be some pressure to step outside of your comfort zone and try other things. I definitely think it's good to have, for example, really cool rewards locked behind different content so that people sometimes feel inspired to do Mythic Plus or PvP or whatever the thing is. But as an example, I also, until they recently released the story mode for Raid, I was very much against the idea of locking the final chapter of a story behind Raid completion, because if somebody cares a great deal about the lore but they just don't have a raid group and don't have the time to raid, it is not fair that they're locked out, because that's not for lack of passion, that's lack of ability. So I think you can have certain locks in place, absolutely, but I think then the locks should be tied somehow to the content that the person is already doing. And when it's, as I said again, something like flying around, digging up dirt, nobody finds that gameplay fun. That's not enjoyable to anyone. That was a bad situation. But people like to be able to grind out rep like that. And is it better to put a hard cap on how much rep you can grind, or rather to keep at least the main story away from that? Because you can't really have both. You can either let people grind rep endlessly, even if it means no lifing, or you can have the main story be something that's locked behind rep, but then everyone is probably going to get there around the same time. But I think both causes too much disruption.
I think you can prevent people from no lifing to get rep. I think that if you want... Okay, so this is a weird thing in design, and we're going to keep it towards the narrative being the reward. I think that you can have, like, much like they have currently, you can push a bunch of things in order to get rep. You can kill every rare on the map every week and get rep. You can do all the events past the 4 that you need to get your keys in order to get rep for the different areas. You can buy up contracts and clear out the world quests to get like the max amount of rep from that. You can skip any of these parts and slow down your rep grind. But there is no way currently that I'm aware of to infinitely grind rep. There used to be a way of doing a abusive amount of rep with the severed threads. People got banned over that. Well, temporarily banned. But as far as I'm aware, there is no way to infinitely grind rep, which means you can go pretty hard at it.
Now you see, I am showing my cards here a little. I'm revealing the fact that I have not been grinding out rep. I've been very lazy, so I didn't know that. I just kind of assumed that there was some sort of mindless grind that you could do. I just hadn't looked it up yet.
No, I think that if you don't put a cap on it, it can lead to some unhealthy behaviors. Like, people are going to grind the rep because they want the mounts. Mounts being, I think, at the high 20s. Let me just quickly look at my thing here.
But
20C severed threads, 23 Howlfall, 23 assembly, and Dornagal is my lagging one, unfortunately. 23 on Dornagal are the flying mounts, and people would push very hard to get the rep to get to those mounts. Same thing with story. Some people really love the story, and they would push very hard to get to those story beats on there. Do I think that they should be locked out from them until it's a story release? I think that's the most acceptable form, where it's like, hey, we want you to accept it, to play it in this order, so it will only release once you reach a particular date. That's the most accepted form, because that's how typically story has been released. It's been like, here's a release date, here's your new episode of this show, here's when the movie comes out, and so then it's translated over to video games. They've experimented with other ones. I don't think the other ones are necessarily.
yeah, I agree. I was about to bring up a series actually, because you said would you release a book chapter by chapter? It's like, well, sometimes people used to. Actually, a lot of the classics, that's how they were released. It used to come out weekly in a newspaper or magazine, and we don't really do that anymore, but that's because the landscape has changed. But there's a lot of argument over streaming. Is it better to release episodes episode by episode, or is it better to release the entire series and dump it? And a lot of people have said that in a community, it actually harms the community, like it harms the community that builds around a series by dumping all the episodes in one go, because people don't get a time to react to it and talk about it among themselves, which is why I think, and that's why, like, I think when you say having the quests behind renown, I think one of the benefits of that does make it appealing is that you don't have all of the quests all on the first day to explore and somehow wrap your head around. You have this later treat to have, to discover and to feel like you've earned. There's definitely something to be said for that. I just believe strongly that it needs to, if it's very, very important story, it needs to be done in a way that people are all talking about it at the same time, just for the sake of the community. But
yeah,
I think we're heading over time by quite a significant amount.
I'm sorry.
So, we're going to talk about side quests?
Definitely on the next episode, which might be 7 or 8. We'll know by next episode.
We are not organized, but boy, can we talk.
I think it's great. And it wouldn't be a discussion if nobody cared about the story. People care about the story. People want the story roughly whenever they can. They want to talk about the story. They want to share. If you're listening to my voice, it's because you want to talk about the story, even if it's not directly about the story. And so I agree with you. It's such a community building thing. I just want to make sure that whatever we get is meaningful and significant. It doesn't need to be directly significant to the World Soul Saga. It could be significant to a character. It could be significant to a culture. It could be just significant as a side story. But for now, we're going to leave that. Where can people find you when you are not discussing the love and value of story?
Well, the number one place is YouTube. My most recent video is about Beladar, so that's a lot of speculation.
Okay.
And otherwise, I'm across social media. I'm very much on Blue Sky now, like most people. I'm part of the exodus from Twitter to Blue Sky, though I am still on Twitter. I'm at Discordian Kitty everywhere, from YouTube to Blue Sky, all over. And where can people find you? TruVillainManny?
Well, you just said it. It's TruVillainManny. That's true without the E. It can be found on Blue Sky. I am also part of the Exodus. There is a account that, like, every so often I will check on X. And then, of course, you can find me on all social media. Again, that's TruVillainManny without the E.
Awesome. And until next time, hail Xal'atath.
Hail Xal'atath.